Group favorite female lead, CP has not yet decided to buy shares. Original work official configuration will not be dismantled. After the Soul Master Elite competition, the team captains and team building of various colleges discussed their impressions of the teaching assistant of the beautiful girl leading the team at Shrek College. Shui Binger, smiling. Cute, want to pry at the foot of the wall. Yuxiangsen, with a slightly unnatural expression. Little fairy Huo Wushuang, blushing and eyes wandering. Likes warm places, which is somewhat like a kitten. Yu Tianheng, deprived of speaking qualification. Duguyen, Daifu's speech. Sang Sang, whom I first met, wants to pry up the wall and queue up Dai Mubai. He silently labeled these guys as dangerous individuals, turned around and had a small meeting with others, with the theme of being sure to be wary of these restless and kind-hearted guys deceiving the somewhat slow senior sister away. Under the relentless and sensational rumors of the unjust junior brothers and sisters, Sangxia's many rotten peach blossoms were successfully smeared into cannibal flowers, to the point where one day she encountered unparalleled fire when she gathered the courage to come forward and greet her. Her first reaction was to take a step back with a serious expression. I heard that your college is trafficking people. Huo Wushuang, small theater. The reporter interviewed Wei Sangxia, despite being similar in age to team members, was actually a team assistant rather than a team member. Sangxia said that the official statement is that she is too strong to play and will disrupt the balance of the game. Reporter. So what about unofficial statements? Sangxia. Can you give me a code? Reporter. Okay. Sang asterisk, a beautiful girl who does not want to be named, said that because the name Shrek 8 Monsters is even more unpleasant than Shrek 7 Monsters, and the team uniform is very ugly. Keywords of the novel. Douluo. What should I do if my senior sister is too popular? No pop-ups. Douluo. What should I do if my senior sister is too popular? Download the full text. Douluo. What should I do if my senior sister is too popular? Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. A Glancing Beauty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. A glancing beauty. Even on the way to Shrek Academy to register, Xiaowu continued to ramble on, expressing her resentment towards the beautiful girl's name that she couldn't get a glimpse of. To be precise, it was a startled glance. The first time they met was in the lobby of the Rose Hotel. Tang San and Dai Mubai had just finished a fight and stood on the ground in chaos, still in a state of battle. Their eyes still looked at each other with a hint of unkindness. With swords and crossbows drawn, an untimely lazy chuckle came from behind the two of them. You're quite impressive, Dai Mubai. The clear and bright voice of the young girl makes people feel refreshed, but her tone is too arrogant, both like teasing and mocking. When the enrollment season is so busy, you come out and talk to people. Everyone present involuntarily turned their heads back to look at Dai Mubai. The speaker was standing with arms clasped in their arms, looking at Dai Mubai with a smile on their face. The girl was a bit too beautiful, more like a doll that Xiaowu had seen in a store window before, which she couldn't afford even with a year's worth of subsidies. She had soft and bright silver hair like moonlight and thick long eyelashes like curtains. A small pear vortex had formed on her cheek, and she looked obedient, clever, and harmless to humans and animals. Xiaowu was hit in the chest by a beautiful girl falling from the sky, covering her heart that had been sprouted, but her mood was not calmed because she was shocked next. I choked and coughed due to the shocking and vulgar speech. Opening a room. The girl's delicate eyebrows furrowed slightly, and her gaze swept over the twins next to Dai Mubai. There was an obvious look of contempt on her face. At a young age, she indulges in excessive indulgence. Be careful not to act in the future. Dai Mubai's first impression of Xiaowu was not very good. She even considered cheating and had a bad temper. At first glance, she knew it was not a good thing. She was a bit worried. Although the girl's words were quite soothing, Dai Mubai was sure to get angry and take action against the woman. Thinking of this, she immediately felt passionate and wanted to come forward to help with a roll of her sleeve. Unexpectedly, Dai Mubai's face suddenly changed dramatically. She obediently lowered her head in front of the girl who was even half a head shorter than him, and her voice also showed a sense of guilt. "Master, senior sister." The girl walked over, took out a piece of hard candy from her pocket, and threw it into her mouth. She impatiently kicked Dai Mubai, causing him to stumble. The twins looked incredulously disillusioned with idols and said, "Teacher Zhao is already cursing. You can go back and wait for further training." At this moment, Dai Xiao dared neither to fight back nor to speak back. He stood beside her dejected, devoid of the aura he had just shown. He murmured softly, "Senior sister, please save some face for me in front of my younger siblings. You're already shameless enough. You even came to the Lovers' Hotel to open a room. If you don't uphold your male virtues, don't say you're my junior brother when you go out. Let's go." Dai Mubai obediently shut up and followed the girl step by step, not only without the aura of a white tiger, but also like a household cat that could be rubbed and flattened by anyone. Even the former Nottingham City elder sister, Xiao Wu, was intimidated by the girl's aura. It wasn't until both of them were out of sight that she realized she had missed something and began to regret it. I forgot to ask her name, Xiao-san, and you didn't remind me." Tang-san remained calm and said, "Didn't Dai Mubai call her senior sister just now? That means she's also a student of Shrek and will definitely see her again after going to the college." The second time was in the shop of the unscrupulous merchant uncle. The morning sunlight shone through the window lattice and speckled on the counter. A half-disassembled soul guide was placed on the counter, and small tools such as pliers, wrenches, and screwdrivers were scattered on one side. The girl was dozing off behind the counter, and in the sunlight, she looked as if she was transparent. "Brother, you see it's the girl from last time." Xiao Wu was instantly excited and pulled Tang San's sleeve as she leaned forward. Tang San's gaze lingered on the exquisite internal structure of the soul guide for a few seconds, and she accidentally stumbled and saved her sleeve with a bitter smile. "Xiao Wu, keep your voice down, they are resting." Oh. Xiao Wu felt embarrassed and stuck out her tongue. She followed his example and lowered her voice, holding her cheeks close to the counter and looking at the girl with an intoxicated expression. She was completely unaware that her behavior at this moment was suspected of being a fool. "Brother, she looks so good, and her eyelashes are also so long. How could she have such good skin like a real person? You can't even see her pores up close." Tang San remained noncommittal about this. He had always been a bit dull about people's appearance, and in Xiao Wu's words, he was a bit face-blind. He just felt that the girl seemed to have some innate shortcomings, with no blood on her face, and even the light blue blood vessels clearly visible under her skin seemed lighter than ordinary people. Like a person made of snow, it made people wonder if even slightly heavier breathing would melt her. He reached out and grabbed a small dance. She was too close, far beyond the normal social distance, and being impolite could potentially scare people. At this moment, the girl's eyelashes trembled slightly. She slowly opened her eyes, thinking that she hadn't woken up yet, so she didn't recognize the two people in front of her. She had just met them a while ago, and she just nodded listlessly, her eyes still covered with a layer of water vapor. "Do you want to buy something?" "Wait a moment," she said. She stood up slowly, holding onto the loose coat that slipped off her shoulder with one hand and turning her head to shout upstairs, "Old Fu, there's a customer." The shop owner, who had a somewhat cunning appearance, came downstairs in slippers. The girl yawned and brushed past him, turning a deaf ear to the former's impatience upon seeing the mess on the counter. "Stinky girl, it's not that you're spending your own money. You don't feel any pain at all," said the shopkeeper as he held the dismantled soul guide, his hands trembling. However, except for a few growls, he seemed helpless. In the end, he decided to turn his grief and anger into revenue. Turning to his opponent, Tang San, who was holding the crystal, revealed a standard fake smile. We won't negotiate a price of 200 gold soul coins at once. If you add some money, I'll let you take this soul guide as well. It's produced by the Marshall Soul Hall and gathers cutting-edge soul guide technology. Buying it will definitely not be a loss. Xiao Wu was left speechless by him. He thought to himself that this crystal, which contains more impurities than its original form, would you dare to ask for 200 gold soul coins? You would have to pay extra for a damaged item that has been torn apart. No wonder the beautiful girl doesn't want to share a room with you and doesn't even want to give you an extra look. Do you, like an unscrupulous merchant, breathe the same air as a beautiful girl in the same store? Do you treat us as big enemies because we are young? Xiao Wu is going to show you the demeanor of a big sister who fights against the invincible thug in Notting City and then bows down to the unscrupulous merchant bully. Then she was grabbed by Tang San again. After a series of twists and turns, mysterious negotiations, and precise reasoning, Tang Yuanzhong San left behind 210 golden soul coins and took away the crystal and the soul guide with an unknown purpose. Xiao Wu was a bit puzzled about this. Even after Tang San showed her the magic of crystal growth, she couldn't dispel her worries about his financial ability. She said she never knew that you were a person who could throw a lot of money. If it were me, no matter how powerful this crystal is, I wouldn't offer a subsidy close to a whole year for us. Then she thought for a moment and added, unless it was the pretty sister in the store who was promoting it to me. Tang San originally felt a bit guilty and reflected that he shouldn't spend money so recklessly. But when he heard the latter half of her sentence, he immediately ignored it and countered, the guy who relies on me to help at the end of each month seems to have no right to question me. Xiao Wu hesitated. Xiao Wu closed her mouth and began to shift the topic from left to right. She said, brother, you have such a good eye that you can see through the reality of ordinary people at a glance. Next time I go shopping, please ask you. What is the relationship between a beautiful sister and that unscrupulous businessman? It's impossible for him to be a father-daughter. That unscrupulous businessman is so ugly, how could he have such a beautiful daughter? Fortunately, this arrangement will not reach the ears of the parties involved, otherwise their academic life may not be easy in the future. A few days later, Tang San, who was standing on the small square with the palm of his hand waiting to listen to the dean's lecture, thought sincerely. He silently sighed and cooperated by covering up the small dance that was tightly held behind him by his arm. Of course, this is the later part. The two of them walking towards Shrek Academy were still unaware of their own fate. Xiao Wu saw a dilapidated small village from a distance, with a slightly tattered plaque hanging from a wooden arch at the entrance. She was stunned and repeatedly confirmed that her eyes were fine. The fixed screw had fallen 3 times, and the sign hanging in mid-air was indeed Shrek Academy, with an ugly and cute green monster avatar printed next to it. Unexpectedly, the conditions of Shrek Academy were not as good as those of the Junior Soul Master Academy in Notting City. Tang San was also somewhat surprised. He didn't question the master, mainly because he knew how much this girl loved beauty. The imagined Gothic spire teaching building, the glass flower room, the marble sculpture fountain in the sky, were all missing. I don't know if she would be so disillusioned that she would turn around and leave. I didn't expect Xiao Wu to come back to her senses after a moment of hesitation. Not only did she leave without turning around, but she also urged Tang San to quickly go ahead and occupy a good position. Tang San was very puzzled, so he asked her why her reaction was so dull. Xiao Wu calmly said, when I walked on the dirt road in the countryside for an hour and didn't see the destination, I had no expectations for this college anymore. I was prepared for it to be old and dilapidated. I didn't expect it to be even more old and dilapidated than what was planned, and there was still a gap. But that's not important, the key is. She suddenly patted Tang San's shoulder, jumping off his back like a rabbit, and rushed out ahead of him. The remaining half of the sentence spun in mid-air and didn't reach Tang San's ears, but he didn't have any doubts. He looked around in the crowd and realized what else could excite Xiao Wu so much in this place. The dazzling figure leaning against the wooden fence that serves as a simple wall of the village, hanging and yawning, is not the beautiful sister that Xiaowu has been thinking about all the way, but who is it? Also known as the mystery of the elite competition of the Advanced Soul Master Academy. Who is the sacred Shrek fairy who hooked up the souls of my team from start to finish without appearing on stage? A copper-walled and iron-walled beautiful girl with absolutely no love brains. Versus team leaders who will become love brains. How many good brothers do you have, senior sister? No, the female protagonist Sang Xia has a weak and venomous tongue, but can beat beautiful girls. She is a member of the Shrek 7 monsters, at the top of the food chain, and is a group pet and leader all. In point one machine. The mainline CP is undecided, and there may be no CP, but there are a large number of single arrows for Sangxia. If you mind, please be cautious and enter carefully. If anyone wants to watch, there will be plans for extra lines. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Zhao Wuji, first ranking of the School Flowers of Advanced Soul Master Academy. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 2 Zhao Wuji, first ranking of the School Flowers of Advanced Soul Master Academy. Although she hasn't been sleepy for a few days, Sang Xia is very sleepy today because she got up at 7:30 this morning, which is really a rare thing for her health-preserving party, which insists on sleeping at least 10 hours a day. So Oscar and Ma Hongjun, who walk into the canteen to look for food together, show a thrilling expression on their faces when they see her, which is similar to seeing the sun coming out from the west. She slowly sits on the seat and drinks her porridge breakfast, not much more than the appetite of cats, Zhao Wuji's words, and then goes out with Mubai after dinner. Even his eyes didn't pass one to two unlucky younger Marshall brothers who seemed to see aliens. As for why wake up early? Of course, it was because the college was understaffed, and every year when recruiting students, Jifren was so anxious that she wished to catch the cat she kept in the dormitory as a laborer. Although she was weak, sick, and disabled, she could still be considered one of the labor forces in the college, and naturally couldn't escape the clutches of the dean. Under his prolonged persuasion and emotional pursuit, as well as coercion and temptation, Sang Xia, who was so annoyed that her scalp tingled, reluctantly let go and agreed to help him when the enrollment came. Another reason for the compromise was that she was a little guilty. At the preparatory meeting for enrollment work, Fred gave instructions on the publicity strategy of the new school year, and spoke carefully and kindly to Sang Xia's name. You don't even need to say anything, just go to the front of the college to show your face, which is more effective than the broken signboard of our college. Sangxia thought to herself, you also know that the signboard of the college is quite shabby. Why can't you go to the village and find a painter to repaint and fix it, and just let it sway in mid-air in its tattered state? It makes people feel that this shabby college doesn't even have a legitimate qualification to run a school. No wonder there have been fewer students on campus than teachers for so many years. She roasted about this for a long time about Fran. She only accepted the monster's slogan and shouted loudly. The key is that the real genius was caught in the door before coming to your dormitory. Are you using the broken college of the village house? The Renwu Soul Hall Academy has the most luxurious teaching team in the whole continent. They directly use soul bones as scholarships, and after graduating from the Tiando Royal Academy, they will have a fiefdom title to achieve class crossing. What can you give them? Is it free? At first, Fran would be furious for this personal attack that directly poked into his heart, scolding her for not being able to tarnish his educational ideals with dirty profit transactions. However, over time, he had learned to accept this fact and, with extreme optimism, discovered Shrek's other core competitiveness. He looked at Sangxia sincerely and said, compared to Barak Academy, which only has a bunch of crooked, cracked, and ugly students, if I were 40 years younger, I would definitely choose Shrek Academy, which has the most beautiful girl on the school flower list of all the advanced Soul Master Academies. Sang Xia, who rarely heard positive reviews of herself among the growing population in the college, was deeply moved. She firmly refused the request to have her profile picture printed on the recruitment brochure and candidly admitted with the same sincerity that she did not participate in that nonsense selection. The photo she submitted was from Zhao Wuji. As for why teacher Zhao was voted at the top of the list, it was probably because her heart was treacherous, and everyone felt that only her own eyes could not be persecuted. Fran was shocked, and the signature and scrupulous merchant's smile collapsed on his face. Zhao Wuji, the top student on the school flower ranking of Advanced Soul Master Academy, was also shocked. It's no wonder that for a while, those little brats in the school looked at him with an expression of wanting to laugh but not daring to. On that day, Dai Mubai, Oscar winner, and Ma Hongjun all participated in training together. A week later, Ma Hongjun weighed 6 pounds and tearfully showed his struggling brothers a thin layer of muscle on his stomach, claiming that every muscle line was soaked in his blood and sweat. Sangxia, on the other hand, had to stand at the entrance of the school to serve as a living sign and a humanoid mascot for the college during enrollment. For this reason, Fran even went to the city to buy a dress decorated with lace, ribbons, and light gauze, and ordered her to change it. Despite her ineffective resistance, Sangxia had to follow suit. In order to match the aesthetic of the dean's dress for children, she even tied a pair of ponytails for her young teeth. After changing her clothes, she looked in the mirror at the elderly children who had 2 ponytails hanging down to the waist and knees, whose stockings were exposed under the skirt. Lace patent leather shoes were also decorated with bows. Finally, she took a deep breath to restrain her own impulse, and turned around without seeing or feeling upset. Witnesses gave their own evaluations of her tattered attire, which was different from her usual shirt and pants. Li Yusong chuckled and said that Sang looked quite cute today, while Sangxia secretly muttered to herself that he, like Fran, is an elderly aesthetic. Dai Mubai also said she looks pretty, even more beautiful than a princess, but the quality and design of the dress chosen by the dean are too poor. Next time, senior sister, you can go to the XX store in Soto City to order, and you can get a 30% discount by quoting my name. Sangxia gave him a thumbs up, even knowing the materials and workmanship of women's clothing so well. Dai Xiao, you are truly consistent in your character. Oscar said that taking photos is necessary. After that, I will print them in bulk, senior sister. If you sign your name, I will sell them to the new students. With your beauty and my business acumen, we will definitely make a lot of money. When the time comes, we will split the bill between you and me. Sangxia confiscated his shadow soul guide and scolded him not to be imaginative. Maybe this year, even a new student won't be able to recruit you. How can you get rich? Selling to mosquitoes in the village. Ma Hongjun also wanted to say something to express his admiration for the young senior sister, but Dai Mubai and Oscar had finished speaking all the words. Due to his limited vocabulary, he struggled for a long time but couldn't find any creative new words. In the end, he had no choice but to dryly say that senior sister, you look 10 years younger in this outfit. Sangxia had already looked at this oversized children's clothing 10,000 times and was stabbed in sadness by him. He slapped him on the back of the head in frustration. But since everyone says it looks good, let's assume it's her aesthetic problem. Sangxia, who was wearing a tired face with insufficient sleep but still attracted 80% of the audience's attention, sighed sorrowfully and restrained her boneless posture. She stood slightly straight and continued to be a dignified wallflower by the fence. Xiao Wu rushed up at this moment. The little girl's eyes lit up and she excitedly said, "Beautiful sister, do you still remember me? We have met before, and we haven't had the chance to say hello. My name is Xiao Wu, the dancing sister. What's your name?" Sangxia has a bad memory. When she was held by Xiao Wu, who was full of stars in her eyes, she felt a bit confused. It took her some time to recall the little episode at the Rose Hotel. She swallowed the phrase, "I don't remember," and bent her eyes to show a particularly gentle business smile. "Ah, I remember. Hello Xiao Wu, my name is Sangxia." Sang Yes Sang, xia xia of summer. I'm glad you can apply to our Shrek Academy and look forward to becoming classmates with you. Her face was so confusing that even the cunning Fran would sometimes momentarily forget her white and black essence when he saw her quietly bending his eyes and smiling, let alone little Dance, who knew nothing about her at this moment. She was knocked unconscious by this smile, holding onto Sangxia's hand and refusing to let go. She thought to herself, even a beautiful girl's hand is different from others. Even in such a hot day, there is no sweat at all. Is this the legendary ice flesh and jade bone? She brainstormed words in her mind, ready to pour out all her admiration. Unfortunately, before she could finish her draft, Sangxia firmly withdrew her hand and calmly reminded her, but no matter what, you can't cut in line. Please follow the order at the registration site and consciously go back in line, otherwise the fate of classmates will come to an end. Xiao Wu. She returned to Tang San's side with a gloomy expression, clutching his sleeve and whispering with a worried expression, "It's over, it's over." She must have thought I was the kind of person who loves to cut in line. What should I do? Xiao San, how should I make up for it? Wu, I just saw that she was too excited. Tang San didn't really want to pay attention to this plea for help, so he sweetly called out to his brother. When he arrived at the place, he immediately changed his face and interpreted the word, crossing the river and demolishing the bridge, to the extreme. He once again snatched back his sleeve, which had been slightly deformed under her repeated torment, from little Dancer's hands. He looked straight at him and said expressionlessly, "You're not good at it. Not only did you cut in line, but you also scolded others for being ugly, and you even beat them to the point where they don't even know your mother." Xiao Wu was shocked and said, "Are you my own brother?" "Indeed not, thank you. I have a natural talent for choosing chapter names, giving myself a thumbs up, and the original 3 dances. Childhood sweetheart, deep affection, combing hair and offering kisses, my 3 dances. Unscrupulous brothers and sisters, dismantling the stage and fighting, hurting each other OOC counts as mine, but I do feel that Zhang Weisher's spoiled wife, CP, is not easy to kowtow." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. At the age of 44, divorce with 2 children. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. At the age of 44, divorce with 2 children. The mere attempt to cut in line was certainly not enough to prevent Xiaowu from entering Shrek Academy. In fact, there were no obstacles, it was like opening a green light all the way. The sole emperor teacher at the entrance of the enrollment school looked at her with a sweet and affectionate gaze, making Xiaowu doubt whether she was his long-lost daughter. He waved his hand and let Dai Mu lead her, Tang San, and the remaining few who passed the test to the second level. Tang San seriously corrected his sister, who had never passed the cultural class, for using inappropriate words. Strong affection is used between couples and is not suitable for teachers. Xiaowu humbly learned, so what words should I use? Tang San choked, his emotions lingering. Like hunger and thirst. It seems that everything is not quite right. When it comes to using it, 2 generations of people who have not been devoted to literature have to admit that their cultural level is limited compared to Xiaowu. However, he doesn't want to show his fear in front of Xiaowu, so he pretended that nothing happened and coldly changed the topic. Xiaowu, are you hungry? Do you want to eat something? I see there are sausages selling there. As if trying to help him out of the situation, the vendor opened his throat and shouted, selling sausages, selling sausages. Take a look, Oscar brand sausages are delicious, sweet, and affordable. How come there are still sausages selling on the exam site? This college is really not legitimate. Xiaowu successfully caught her attention. She murmured softly, but after walking such a long way in the big sun, Tang San was speechless. You were all carried by me all the way, and queuing for half a day. She felt that she really needed to replenish her energy, so she nodded obediently and said, eat. Tang San sent her to queue up to buy sausages on his own. The bearded vendor enthusiastically promoted his products to him, saying, junior brother, do you want one? Oscar brand sausages are perfect for both children and the elderly. The taste is the most guaranteed. Buying 10 at once will give you a 95% discount and unlock a mysterious luck bonus, ensuring that you can pass the entrance exam more easily. Tang San has always been a staunch practitioner of the financial management concept that money must be spent, and the money to be saved must be saved. He can throw out 200 gold soul coins without blinking his eyes to take down the plate crystal used to make dragon whisker needles, but he will never be the scapegoat of buying 10 sausages in one breath and supporting himself to death. Thanks to his father's orphan parenting style, he has been engaged in a battle of wits and courage with vendors since he was about to reach the stove edge while stepping on a bench. Bargaining prices starts with a bone fracture, and no matter how clever the shopkeeper's tongue is, he cannot shake his steel-like will, even being at one point by nodding city, big or small. The market has joined forces to block it, and the outdated sales tactics of a mere 95% discount and elusive mystical bonuses, which dates back 800 years, certainly won't move him at all. Boffin calmly lined up 10 copper soul coins in front of the vendor and said, "Uncle, 2 sausages, thank you." The business smile on the vendor's weathered face suddenly froze. "What are you saying?" Tang San thought he was deaf and thought to himself that this uncle is not easy. Disabled people still have to come out to make a living. He politely raised his voice and repeated it, even using respectful language. "Uncle, could you please give me 2 sausages?" He even used honorific language. After realizing this, the vendor, who was filled with sorrow, became even more excited. He rolled his sleeve and jumped off the mobile dining car. Tang San thought he was going to fight him, so he alertly put himself in a defensive position on his side. Unexpectedly, he just stuffed 2 sausages into his hand and shouted angrily, "I'm only 14 years old this year, and you call me uncle." Tang San was surprised and said, "You're only 14 years old." The vendor nodded fiercely and said, "Of course, my name is Oscar and I am a student of the college. You can ask anyone in the school and you will know that I am 14 years old. You look like you're 44 years old." Out of courtesy, Tang San swallowed this slander back. He still doesn't quite believe it, but Oscar's gaze at him was firm and sincere. After hesitating for a moment, he reluctantly changed his mind and said, "Senior, I'm sorry, I was impolite just now." Oscar didn't seem really angry either. After a hearty laugh, he accepted his apology with ease and even reached out to pat Tang San's shoulder, saying, "It's okay, just visit my sausage specialty store more in the future." "Tang San, what are you doing?" Dai Mubai, as he turned around, saw the 2 sausages in Tang San's hand and his face immediately turned pale. He gave Oscar a warning glare. Oscar's face turned bitter as soon as he saw Dai Mubai. With a dry smile, he respectfully pointed a steaming sausage in front of him and said, "Dai, do you want a sausage to eat?" "Go to hell." Dai Mubai didn't have any good breath and waved his hand like a fly to take the sausage away. He turned his head and said to Tang San, "Tang San, this sausage can't be eaten." Tang San was a bit confused and said, "Why?" Dai Mubai's forehead twitched without a trace. Even in front of the budding students who were about to enter the academy and grow up, it was difficult for him to talk about this matter. He began to think about whether it was possible to silence Oscar on the spot as if it had never happened before. After repeatedly persuading himself 3 times that doing so would lead to being chased by the academy teachers, he had to regretfully give up this plan and use his lifelong kindness to calm down and say, "You can get a new sausage in front of Tang San. Don't be fooled by him. Look at how old he looks, how could he be 14 years old? In fact, he's 40.4 years old and divorced with 2 children." Sanxia spoke in a leisurely manner, and Dai Mubai also returned behind her. A girl named Zhu Zhuqing was the last student to pass the first test today. Li Yusong generously let her go when she saw no one left. Sanxia sighed, "Why don't everyone say you are kind, Teacher Li? If it were Mr. Fu here, he would make me stand tall all day." "Teacher Li, you are so kind. I support you in initiating an anti-Flemish dictatorship revolution at Shrek College and changing the dynasty to become the new dean of the college. Li Yusong was horrified to hear this, afraid that the dean, who was too careful to hear, would think that he really coveted his 1 acre of land, would write a note of him in his notebook and quickly wave her away. Dai Mubai invited her to watch the excitement of the freshman entrance exam. Sangxia looked at the sky and felt that she couldn't sleep even when she went back. She nodded and agreed. Unexpectedly, the lively scene of Mengxin sliding and shoveling evil eyes and white tigers didn't catch her eye. Oscar started singing and playing, knowing that he should have locked his dormitory today. Oscar, who was being squeezed by his senior brothers and sisters, looked a bit anxious and said, I said, senior sister, Dai, do we still have some classmate friendship? What do you think of me when you ruin my image? Sang Xia asked puzzled, the image of a single father who has worked hard to set up a stall and pulled his 2 children to grow up is so inspiring. How can it be called destruction? Dai Mubai was so happy to see Oscar being hurt that even the lingering shadow of not lifting over his head seemed to have dissipated quite a bit. He really wanted to laugh, but was afraid of laughing too recklessly and affecting his momentum. It took him a lot of effort to hold on to a cold face and said, hurry up, don't let me do it myself. Oscar could do nothing. If he was a soulmate with a little fighting ability, he would fight hard to defend his innocence. However, he was the 5th scum in the college whose fighting power was only slightly higher than Rice Dumpling, Sangxia's cat. He could only swallow his pride, blush and droop his eyes, and recite the ghost curse that made the whole Shrek College deeply shocked. Even the dean, who was recognized as the most shameless and the least limited, played the let's forget it. The whole scene fell silent. After a brief moment of silence, Tang San respectfully put back the 2 sausages in his hand, and then retreated 5 meters to set the necessary safe distance with Oscar. Although he couldn't see it on his face, he really suffered a great impact, which can be evidenced by his performance of forgetting to even retrieve the 10 copper soul coins that were thrown back into the water, which goes against his character. Tang San, on his first day of school, had his first impression of his roommate Oscar. At the age of 44, he divorced and had 2 children, and he sexually harassed new students regardless of gender. Special lucky bonus refers to the fact that a despicable spendthrift who buys 10 in one go will receive special attention from Flanders, increasing their chances of enrollment while also being ruthlessly poached. Rice Dumpling and Oscar's fighting power is quantum wave dynamic. Sang Xia forgot that when she cut her nails for Rice Dumpling's fighting power was higher than Oscar's. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. No one should look up to others. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. No one should look up to others. Oscar lamented. Oscar was wronged, Oscar was struggling to the death. He said that the Tang brothers, I am not a pervert, I am really 14 years old, and I don't have 2 children. Tang San awkwardly and politely replied with a smile, determined not to believe him a word more. Sang Xia was so annoyed by him that he ordered him to stop harassing Tang San and roll back to the dormitory to shave off his unsightly beard. Oscar had no choice but to push his dining cart away in a disheveled manner. Before leaving, he earnestly begged his senior sister to show mercy and not inflict any further damage on his already precarious image. Sang Xia rolled her eyes and asked him to roll away quickly. Seeing him disappear from sight as he trotted, Tang Sankai looked at Dai Mubai with a complex expression and couldn't help but confirm again, is he really 14 years old? A student at Shrek College. I'm making you laugh. Although everyone is constantly undermining each other, Dai Mubai still needs to maintain his plastic brotherhood with Oscar behind his back. He is indeed 14 years old, maybe because of his food and martial soul. His beard grows very fast, and he will become what he is in a day without shaving. Therefore, he also has the nickname Uncle Big Sausage in the academy. The people present coincidentally revealed an indescribable expression. Dai Mubai patted Tang San's shoulder and said, let's go, I'll take you through the exam. There's no need to queue up. Tang San hesitated for a moment and instinctively said, "Isn't that good?" Xiaowu's reaction was even greater. She didn't want Sangxia to misunderstand that she was the low-quality group who loved to cut in line. She quickly took a step back, crossed her hands in front of her chest, and made a resolute gesture of drawing a line with someone like Dai Mubai who didn't follow the rules. When she looked at him, her face was full of words, "Don't harm me." Dai Mubai chuckled and said, "Don't worry, I'm not favoritism. This is the treatment you deserve." Xiao Wu was still worried and turned her head to look at Sang Xia's expression. Sang Xia quickly forgot her casual words to avoid laziness, and when she met her gaze, she felt a bit confused. After thinking for a moment, she raised her hands and clenched them into fists, making a cheering gesture to encourage the lovely girl, saying, "Wishing you a smooth exam." "Okay, thank you, senior sister." Excitedly, the adorable Xiao Wu swung her little fist back at her and naturally changed her mouth. Dai Mubai walked up to the teacher in charge of the second-level test, whispered a few words in his ear, and then pointed to Tang San and Xiao Wu. After obtaining the teacher's nod permission, he turned back and gestured to the two of them to come with him. "Let's go, I'll take you to the fourth-level exam. If you pass, you'll be admitted directly." The blatant differential treatment immediately caused dissatisfaction among candidates who were still waiting in line for the second round of exams. The people who could pass the rigorous admission preliminary examination at this peculiar college were all top students from previous schools. They were picked by their noses or eyes for a long time and had to queue up under the scorching sun, accumulating a lot of resentment. It's okay for everyone to do the same. You even openly opened the back door, which ignited public anger. The candidate with a bad temper simply shouted out, "What's going on? Why can they get into the fourth round of exams without taking the exam? But we have to pass the first round." Dai Mubai's eyebrows furrowed. His handsome appearance was already very oppressive, especially when his face was expressionless. He stared at the bird, making it feel like it was being targeted by a fierce predator. He nervously swallowed saliva and his legs trembled, but in order to maintain fairness in the exam and everyone's rights, he bravely did not take a step back. Of course, the main reason is that he has no room for retreat, and the table is behind him. Before Dai Mubai could speak, Sangxia poked half of her head out from behind him and said it was because you were ugly. In addition to Tang San and Xiao Wu, she also selected two candidates from the queue and said solemnly, "Look, only those who look good like this can be exempted from the exam. Those who look ugly like you have to queue up." Sang Xia, the biggest difference between the entire Shrek College philosophy in France, insists on equality for all, education for all, and repeatedly mocks Fran's self-proclaimed educator at school affairs meetings. True educators will not divide students into 3, 6, or 9 classes. Since Flanders founded Shrek College, he has received countless similar sarcastic comments. Even now, these words cannot break his defense, but only Sang Xia cannot. He believes that an incurable beauty control like Sang Xia, who was the first to vote against Ma Hongjun when he enrolled and gave the reason that he looks ugly, is not worthy of saying such words. Zhao Wuji summed up his statement and said that both of you are discriminatory, and no one should look down on anyone. Dai Mubai, who was interrupted, couldn't help but laugh and cry, "Senior sister, please don't cause trouble." He turned his head and said seriously, "The second level is to test your specific soul power level. If your soul power exceeds level 25, you can also go directly to the fourth level." Compared to the nonsense of good-looking, this standard seems more reasonable, but the rest of the people seem even more skeptical. Are you saying that their soul power level is above level 25? This is impossible. We are only 12 years old, how could anyone have such high soul power? Dai Mubai has never had much patience. Seeing these people still chattering and struggling, he interrupted them with a cold snort, "You can't do it yourself, don't think others can either. When I entered the academy, my soul power was at level 25. He picked up the white crystal ball on the table that was used to test his soul power and threw it over. Tang San, show them your soul power. Tang San had seen this type of crystal ball in the Martial Soul Hall and knew it was used for testing soul power below level 30. If the soul power exceeded level 30, it would burst, and he didn't shirk his responsibility. After taking it over, he used Shentian Gong to inject soul power into it. In an instant, the white light shone brightly, and the entire crystal was illuminated by such a dazzling light. In Tang San's hands, it was like a small sun, a symbol of the imminent overload of soul power. He had long been accustomed to the surprised gaze of others and did not think it was anything worth showing off. He calmly handed the crystal ball to Xiao Wu. The same white light shone again, reaching level 29. Now the other candidates completely shut up. Seeing Tang San, Xiao Wu's gaze was like looking at a monster, especially the unlucky bird with a head. His gaze was dull and his lips trembled. From birth to now, it was the first time he had suffered such a series of painful blows as today. Moreover, all of his injuries are real, and he can't compare to others in all aspects, whether it's his appearance or talent. The proud son of Qiantian, who was knocked unconscious by the 2 blows on the head, began to suspect that his life was regretful. He felt that he should not have come to Shrek Academy, a laborious institution, and that Barak Academy in the city was not popular. They even gave him a full scholarship. One of the girls selected by Sang Xia from the team chuckled playfully and said, "In that case, I think I can also skip the 2nd and 3rd levels. I think I have passed both the appearance and soul power levels, right?" Xiao Wu handed her the crystal ball, and a bright white light appeared again. Although not as strong as Tang San and Xiao Wu, it definitely exceeded the level of soul power of level 25, about level 26. She breathed a sigh of relief and playfully blinked at Sangxia. Sangxia nodded solemnly and said, "Of course, I only give you a perfect score on behalf of myself." Finally, the girl, who had been cold and silent all along, suddenly swept away and grabbed the crystal ball at a mysterious speed that was difficult for ordinary people to catch with the naked eye. The white light surged again, brighter than before, at the level of 27 soul power. She put the crystal ball back in place and silently lifted her head to look around. Despite her childish face, her gaze was cold and sinister, as if saying, "If I waste any more time, I'll kill you all." Perhaps intimidated by the huge gap between himself and genius, or simply afraid of being silenced by killer-like competitors, no one dared to raise objections this time, so Dai Mubai took the exempted person to the 4th level. Tang San's expression moved slightly, and he looked at Sang Xia thoughtfully. He did not feel the fluctuation of the force field, indicating that she did not use her soul power to detect the level of the candidate. So, was it a coincidence or an astonishing observation that she accurately picked out those who exceeded level 25 among them? Dai Mubai called her senior sister, indicating that she enrolled earlier than Dai Mubai. Dai Mubai is now at level 37, so will her level be higher? Sangxia and Dai Mubai walked together, marveling at the fragrant and soft elementary school girls this year. Every day, they looked at you, Xiao Ao and Xiao Pang, and Shrek was so silly that they almost vomited. Dai Mubai was very aggrieved and said, "Sister, isn't I your favorite little white anymore?" Sangxia said, "Of course not. My favorite little white is the dog from the village head's house." Dai Mubai couldn't accept it. He asked me, "Even if I'm not as good as a dog, it's okay." Tang San couldn't understand why Dai Mubai could accept that he's not as good as a dog. How could he be even worse than someone who hasn't enrolled yet? "I am your legitimate active student, okay?" Sang Xia looked at him as if he was looking at a mentally disabled person. "You, a stinky man who doesn't abide by male ethics, actually wants to compete with beautiful girls. Counting the stinky socks on your dormitory balcony that can be lined up for 2 football teams, and then asking yourself if you are good enough." After listening to this heartfelt conversation, Tang San silently came to 2 conclusions. Firstly, it may not be a coincidence or exceptional observation ability. Sister Sangxia is really just looking at 2 girls who are good. Looking. Secondly, when choosing a dormitory, be sure to stay away from Dai Mubai. Dai Mubai. Senior sister's sole power. Speaking it out, I'm afraid you might dodge. And the daily theater Dai Mubai and Ma Hongjun will use card games to determine who is the unlucky one who has to wash the stinky socks that have been accumulated for 3 months. Oscar couldn't stand them very much. As a practitioner in the catering industry, he believed that maintaining personal hygiene was the most basic professional quality. This tradition was learned from the teachers. Zhao Wuji has well-developed limbs and no mind, so he always washes socks. But after the boy dormitory also began to inherit this tradition, he never washed his socks again. Ma Hongjun, who always loses, humbly asks teacher Zhao for the secret, and he mysteriously says that the secret cannot be revealed. Later, Ma Hongjun realized that Zhao Wuji had thrown all the socks he wanted to wash into his laundry basin. No wonder sometimes he always washed more and more. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Highlights a non-interference principle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 highlights a non-interference principle. Dai Mubai was not just teasing Sangxia, but also conscientiously explained the general situation of the college to the new students along the way, specifically referring to the college's faculty, extreme admission tests, and strict graduation standards. He basically included all the selling points that Shrek College could offer, and did not mention anything else such as the campus environment, scholarship system, and team-building activities because there was no such thing at all. My Gothic Spire teaching building. Xiaowu had calmed down from her excitement and began to look at the various unpleasant things at Shrek Academy. She followed Dai Mubai as she walked through the village, where there were only a few low-rise civilian rooms that were 3 floors high, and side up to the sky. My sky glass greenhouse. There is no flower house, but there is a vegetable field that has just been fertilized with cow dung. The smell is touching. Xiao Wu covers her nose and wishes to leave 8 Zhang away. Tang San, who used to open a vegetable field at home and achieved vegetable freedom, accepted it well and praised it for its good appearance. Dai Mubai said to himself, can it be okay? I am more meticulous in taking care of this land than taking care of my father. But he was not prepared to let these younger generations who did not understand the dangers of the world experience the rich and colorful life in this school too early, so he decided not to mention this matter for the time being. My marble sculpture fountain. Xiaowu passed by the creaking wooden water wheel and, feeling discouraged, punched it, splashing countless splashes of water. Dai Mubai stopped explaining and asked in confusion, what did this little rabbit mutter all the way? His Royal Highness, the second prince of the Star Luo Empire, has never read a few books seriously since he left home. He used to see these things every day, but he called them pointed buildings, glass greenhouses, and water pools, so they don't correspond at all. Of course, Tang San knew what Xiao Wu was talking about. He nudged her with his elbow and warned her to be cautious in her words and actions. Without changing his expression, he talked nonsense to Dai Mubai. She is expressing her joy of finally entering her dream college. Dai, you don't need to pay attention to her, just wait for her excitement to pass. Your brother is quite impressive, he talks nonsense seriously. Sang Xia whispered to Xiao Wu and squinted her eyes with a mischievous smile. How about it? The gap with the aristocratic academy in her mind is too big to accept, right? Xiao Wu tried to cooperate with Tang San's acting, blinking her innocent big eyes and pretending to be silly. Senior sister, what are you talking about? I don't understand, haha. It's really great to be able to enter Shrek Academy, and you're such a beautiful senior. Come on, I'm not that silly little white. Sang Xia pouted, I've watched the Crown Prince of the Empire falling in love with me too, but after the author wrote about my favorite male lead, I didn't pursue him anymore. Xiao Wu widened her eyes in surprise and said, Hey senior sister, I didn't expect you to read this book too. I'm from the Crown Prince party, and in the latest update, he even proposed to the female lead. The Crown Prince of the Empire Falling in Love with Me is currently the hottest serialization in the Douluo fashion magazine's Thousand Hearts Not section. It tells the winding love story between a commoner female protagonist who was specially recruited to the Tianx Royal Academy and various types of male characters. Xiao Wu doesn't necessarily have to flip through a few pages of books at the end of the season, but the serialization does not end in time. She even cuts out the portrait of the female protagonist's brother and posts it on Tang San's head, shouting, "Change for me." Tang San smiles and picks up a rolled-up magazine to chase her for half an hour. The girl with a level 26 soul power smile, warm and gentle, couldn't help but join the discussion. "I'm also chasing after that. Don't you think whether it's the domineering prince or the affectionate knight, they are all too royal? The trend now is sick and delicate, so I think the big villain will definitely win in the end. If the author dares to write like this, then one of her, the female protagonist, and the reader must be a masochist," said Sang Xia, a lively and cold rebuttal. The heartfelt little dance jumped her feet and said, "I don't agree with this marriage. The Crown Prince and the Savior are a perfect match. Whoever dares to break them up should be struck by lightning and thunder." But the most intense reaction turned out to be the black-haired girl who was so meticulous that people mistakenly thought she was mute all the way. She coldly inserted the conversation and said, "He's damn it." Dai Mubai suddenly felt a chill in his neck. The isolated and helpless villain fan stubbornly argued for self-promotion. "It's because you all don't understand the charm of sickly women. And when discussing the plot, just discuss the plot and don't insult the character, is it okay? Do villain fans have no human rights?" Dai Mubai and Tang San looked at each other, and the topic took advantage of their lack of attention and was taken out for 108,000 miles to another completely unfamiliar universe. Dai Mubai tried hard to bring the topic back to the right track, but the girls ignored him completely. He was addicted to party politics and sexual communication and couldn't extricate himself. In the end, he gave up and shrugged helplessly at Tang San. Tang San also shook his head humorously and said, "Let's not get involved in the girls' discussion. We can't understand anyway. Brother Dai, can you tell me more about the other situations in the college? The CP party is fiercely contested over there, and here you ask and answer with brotherly respect, highlighting one aspect of non-interference." 4. When hearing about the current number of students at Shrek College, even if Tang San was calm and composed, he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Poor children have long been in charge, and he has been in charge since childhood. Although the scope of concern has not exceeded one person so far, Tang Hao and Xiao Wu's time does not overlap, it can also be inferred that this number of students is difficult to support the normal operation of a college. Dai Mubai gave a bitter smile and said, "In the entire Douluo continent, we can be considered the only college with more teachers than students. Even if we admit you, the number of students in our college will never exceed the teachers. Do you think why the college is located in such a small village? It's because of a lack of funds. If it weren't for my family sponsoring some, I'm afraid the college would have closed last year. If we can't recruit more students this year, then the 4 of us who are studying will be the last batch of students at Shrek College." The antagonist fans' 2 fists were unbeatable with 6 hands, so they had to endure humiliation and temporarily cease fighting. They turned around to pick up Dai Mubai's words and asked with some confusion, "Why doesn't the college relax some of the requirements for admission exams? I think there are also quite a few applicants." Sangsha silently looked at Dai Mubai. As expected, the founder, president, and only member of the Flender Support Association at Shrek Academy immediately raised her chest with pride, saying, "Your Excellency has said, it's better to have something than to have something. No matter when Shrek Academy closes, it will never accept waste, just monsters. The Academy has admitted a total of 62 students, but only 14 have actually graduated. After leaving the Academy, none of these 14 people have become world-renowned figures. The most outstanding one of them is now the youngest elder in the Martial Soul Hall, with authority second only to the Pope. The rest who have not graduated cannot complete 40 before the age of 20. Level cultivation and death while hunting soul beasts. The dean once said, if it's not level 41, don't go out and embarrass him. Sang Xia couldn't bear it anymore and rubbed the series of goosebumps that appeared on her arm vigorously. Speaking sounds better than singing, that's silly. She got stuck in her shell and swallowed the remaining dirty word, fearing that there were still new students present. At the consecration ceremony, one pope's crown was affectionate, thanks to the cultivation of the martial soul hall, thanks to the appreciation of the pope's crown, thanks to the recognition of the worshippers, without mentioning Shrek in a word. Dai Mubai was indignant and said, that's because he was ungrateful. Ah, right, Sang Xia perfunctorily said, all 14 graduates have been ungrateful and have achieved great success. After so many years, they haven't thought of turning back to support their alma mater. I think the admissions officer should reflect on their teaching policies, see if there are any problems, and how to teach some bad guys. Tang San fell into confusion and was led into a ditch by Sangxia. At first, he had the impression of the dean as an isolated idealist. Now, he felt that the dean was an empty-nest old man who could sing my son's rebellion and break my heart. If Sangxia knew his thoughts, he would definitely merge the two. Later, when the two of them talked about this matter, Tang San tried to interpret Sang Xia's evaluation of the dean. He arranged and combined these two options, asking whether it was an isolated empty-nest elderly person or an aging idealist. Can't it be an idealist who can sing my son's rebellion and break my heart? Sangxia shook her head and said that he was a person who could sing about my son's rebellion and break my heart, while also having ideals like dementia in old age. Frand even felt relieved about it. He never expected that in the eyes of this little bastard, I could still be considered a person. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Heaven has its way, you don't go to hell, there is no door, you surrender yourself. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Heaven has its way, you don't go to hell, there is no door, you surrender yourself. The helpless Dai Mubai was worried. On the one hand, he was his elder martial sister, and on the other hand, he was the spiritual idol of his life mentor. He didn't want the dean to be complained about by the elder martial sister until he lost his image in his new life, nor did he want to disobey the elder martial sister. So he decided not to continue this topic. Cough, here comes the 4th level. This venue is slightly smaller than the previous 2nd level, only about 200 square meters. A square table and a lounge chair were set up outside the venue, and a burly middle-aged man was dozing off on the lounge chair. He is much stronger than an ordinary person, and a chair of normal size seems a bit cramped for him, making a creaking sound under his pressure. He is not worried that he will collapse this chair that has been under too much pressure. He happily clicks his lips and hums a song, and his hand is still resting on the handle to beat the beat. Teacher Zhao, I have brought someone to conduct the 4th level assessment. Dai Mubai bowed slightly to the man. Is there a 4th level this year? Surprisingly, there are still 4. The middle-aged man opened his eyes drowsily, and when he saw Dai Mubai bringing 4 people this time, a hint of surprise appeared on his face. And they are all exempt from the 2nd and 3rd level tests. Upon hearing this, Teacher Zhao's eyes lit up and he stood up from the chair. His already sturdy figure felt even more oppressive as he stood up, more like a bandit than the teacher. All 4 have exceeded level 25. Not bad, it seems there are quite a few little monsters this year. This is my final level, and by passing my test, you can officially become a member of Shrek Academy. However, my test is not so easy to pass. Practical experience is a must-have for every soul master's strength. What I assess is your ability in this area. His gaze swept over a few children, with a fierce and malevolent appearance. However, his gaze showed an elder-like gentleness. My name is Zhao Wuji. Since all 4 of you have passed the 2nd and 3rd levels without passing the test, I will personally accompany you to play. Now I will give you time to get to know and discuss with each other after a stick of incense. After a stick of incense, the test begins. The content of the test is that the four of you work together to resist my attack. As long as one person can persevere until the end, it is considered that you have passed the level. I hope you understand not to try to be clever, no one can escape this range with enough speed. At the same time, I can also remind you. It's impossible to stop my attack on your own. Coordinating and cooperating with each other is your only chance of success. Dai Mubai was stunned. He didn't expect Zhao Wuji to change the assessment content on the spur of the moment. If he were to take action, the passing rate of this assessment would probably plummet. Even if these children could pass by chance, they would inevitably suffer. Most of them were still girls. He hesitated to persuade them, but because he knew too much about Zhao Wuji's temper, he didn't know where to start. Teacher Zhao. Sangxia didn't consider so much. Her gaze at Zhao Wuji was filled with complex emotions such as, I didn't expect you to be this kind of person, shameless, and, did your mind get stuck in the door? She said, Teacher Zhao, do you have face? These kids are not as old as you when they pack up, so you naturally want to fight them. She had a petite figure and was blocked tightly by Dai Mubai. It was only when Zhao Wuji poked her head out that he realized she was also there. His calm smile stiffened, and he thought to himself, why didn't this little girl sleep in the dormitory today? But the Ming Wang remained steadfast, his body full of iron bones and his mouth even harder than bones. If he said something, he would never take it back. He stared at him and forced himself to puff up his face, pretending to be fat. I'm testing the quality of this year's new students for the dean. If you don't understand, little girl, don't talk nonsense. Alright, you don't have to say anything more. I'm the examiner, and I'll take the exam as I say. After saying these words, he had already lit the incense stick, and the softer incense stick was nailed to the ground with just a flick of his finger, firmly standing. He stopped looking at the few little guys who were about to become his opponents and returned to his chair, pretending to be dead with his eyes closed. Sangxia really wanted to scold him, but she felt it was unnecessary. The two people recognized by Shrek Academy as having the highest resistance to language attacks were Frand and Zhao Wuji. Frand mainly relied on his thick skin and poor manners, while Zhao Wuji had a simple low IQ and couldn't understand. Even if you scolded him, he could only understand a sentence with a simple mind and well-developed limbs, and even thought you were praising him. She took a deep breath and turned her head to look at the group of unlucky little ones with a compassionate expression, saying, Teacher Zhao has made a decision, and even 10 stubborn donkeys cannot be pulled back. You'd better pray first that he won't get too excited and forget to keep his hand. Xiaowu has always been fearless, but at this moment, she is still blindly optimistic and fearlessly shrugs her hands, saying, is it possible that this teacher Zhao, like the teacher at the door, is a strong soul emperor? Dai Mubai shook his head and said, no, it's not. Xiaowu was even more afraid. What are you afraid of? How can we say that all four of us have strength close to level 30? With 4 against 1, as long as the strength difference is not too significant, isn't it enough time to withstand a pillar of incense? Dai Mubai looked at the little rabbit with the same compassionate gaze as Sang Xia, who knew nothing about his own fate. Teacher Zhao is indeed not the Soul Emperor, he is a level 76 Soul Saint. He is the Vice Dean of the college, with comprehensive strength second only to the Dean. Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu. I want to curse. Time is running out, let me briefly tell you what skills Teacher Zhao is good at, and then you must immediately decide on the tactics against him. Otherwise, let alone a pillar of incense, it would be good if you could withstand his first attack. Dai Mubai shrugged. Originally, Teacher Zhao was only responsible for the invigilation of the 4th level, and your opponent should be me. As long as you can hold a pillar of incense in my hand for a while, you will pass. But who knew that his string was not right today and he had to personally take action? Did his brain get stuck in the door? Sangxia said. Teacher Zhao's martial soul is a powerful beast spirit known as the Diamond Bear. His body is flawless and his defense is extremely terrifying. Even a soul master of the same level as him would find it difficult to break through his defense and cause damage to him. Therefore, he is nicknamed the Immovable King in the academy. The girl next to Xiao Wu clearly heard the name and exclaimed in shock at the words, "Is he the immovable Ming King? He has been silent on the mainland for 10 years, and I didn't expect to hide as a teacher at Shrek Academy." At that time, immovable Ming King had a conflict with the Martial Soul Hall, and the Martial Soul Hall wanted to punish him, but he was forced to break free from the siege of 16 bishops. Later on, that matter came to an end. The bishops of the Martial Soul Hall were at least level 60 or above Soul Emperor level powerhouses, and Zhao Wuji was probably only in his 60s at that time. Isn't he even more powerful now? Dai Mubai nodded sympathetically and painfully, affirming her erudition and knowledge. At least, I have never seen Teacher Zhao act with all his might. So, you should seek your blessings. Now, let's get to know each other first, report your names and abilities, and see how you can cooperate to pass Teacher Zhao's exam. Dai Mubai was most familiar with Tang San, and his gaze naturally fell on him, gesturing for him to come first. Tang San nodded politely to the crowd and said, "My name is Tang San. I am a soul warrior of the weapon Martial Soul Blue Silver Grass, and I am a level 29 Control Series soul warrior." Xiaowu naturally followed closely behind. Xiaowu, Beast Martial Soul Rabbit, level 29 Strong Attack War Soul Master. The third one should have arrived at the girl standing next to Xiaowu in order, but for some reason she hesitated for a moment. The cold black-haired girl took advantage of this gap and spoke expressionlessly, "Zhu Zhuqing, the Beast Martial Soul Ghost Spirit Cat, the 27-level Sensitive Attack Series Soul Master." The girl who was robbed first was stunned and quickly said, "My name is Ning Rongrong, the 7 Treasures Glass Pagoda of the Weapon Soul, and I am a level 26 Auxiliary Weapon Soul Master." 7 Treasures of Glass. Anyone who has some understanding of the world of Soul Masters will not have heard of this name. It is widely recognized that the most powerful auxiliary weapon in the Pan-continent is the Martial Soul, which can only be possessed by the direct descendants of the 7 Treasures in Glass sect. Sang Xia looked at her with a puzzled expression and said, 7 Treasures of the Glass sect. Can I interview you to see why there is a way to heaven, and why don't you go to hell without a door? Did you self-invest? What exactly attracted you to this brand of broken school? Dai Mubai opened his mouth and wanted to make up for Shrek Academy. Dai Mubai couldn't find anything to make up for, so he shut up. Seeing everyone else curiously looking at her, Ning Rongrong stuck out his tongue and smiled with 2 shallow dimples on his cheek. "I sneaked out of home and happened to see Shrek College enrolling students, so I came to sign up and try it out. If there are any other questions, let's wait until we have passed the test in front of us. My 2 soul skills can enhance everyone's speed and strength attributes respectively, with an increase of about 30%. There is no problem with a continuous stick of fragrance." Dai Mubai glanced at the pillar that had already burned half of the incense and urged, "Your team is good, and it can be considered a complete team system. How to resist Teacher Zhao's attack is up to you to decide. Hurry up the time." Sangxia suddenly reached out and patted his head, "You too." Daily Theater Reading Preferences of the Women's Group. Sang Xia loves to read Jiangwen without CP, and she said that love only affects the speed at which I draw my sword. Xiao Wu likes to be domineering. The CEO falls in love with me and cannot expect a rabbit to have such a high pursuit of human literature. Ning Rongrong is rebellious. She loves literature that distorts stomach pain, and her book list includes all kinds of forced love due to illness and blackening. The 7 Treasures Glass sect was worried about whether her criteria for choosing a spouse would be affected. It wasn't until they saw her take Oscar back that they breathed a sigh of relief. Although she was still a food-oriented person, the young man looked at least normal. But Zhu Zhuqing, who reads the main male protagonist's competition for power and also excerpts from the country's governance strategies for notes, has a much more ambitious career than Dai Mubai. However, Sangxia hesitates to speak, and she feels that Zhu Zhuqing's efforts are in the wrong direction. Generally, officials do not learn about governance from light novels, except for Coral Palace Xinhai, not, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. Kill Me, Count Me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Kill me, count me, ah. Me. Dai Mubai asked in confusion, feeling a bit confused by her sudden response. Can it still be me if it's not you? Sang Xia raised her beautiful eyebrows. Do you really let 4 little ghosts who are less than level 30 fight with teacher Zhao? Plus, he's also using big things to bully small things. He doesn't think it's embarrassing, I think it's embarrassing. As she spoke, she walked up to Zhao Wuji and kicked him, saying, Get up, at such an old age, you still want to come out one after another. It's best not to capsize in the sewer, otherwise I'll take a picture of your fate and frame it together with the college sign, so that everyone who comes and goes can see how embarrassing you are. Ning Rongrong opened her mouth in an O shape. She thought she was already arrogant and reckless enough. Unexpectedly, a small elementary school courtyard hidden in the village still had a rival who was on par with her, even more tiger than her. At least she dared not speak to the restless Ming Wang, who was known for his irritability before retiring. Her gaze at Sangxia was mixed with curiosity, admiration, and awe, and she couldn't help but lower her voice and ask Dai Mubai, I heard you call her senior sister. She's also Shrek's student, isn't she? What is her current level? You can ask her yourself later. Dai Mubai played a trick. He was afraid that speaking up would hurt these little guys and make them perform poorly in the assessment. After all, it was because of this that he performed poorly when he enrolled. Sang Xia and Zhao Wuji are still arguing over there. Can you understand the importance of respecting teachers, little girl? Zhao Wuji stood up helplessly from the rocking chair and replaced Sangxia to sit on it. And shouldn't the invigilator be a novice? Why are you so diligent? You really understand the importance of respecting teachers and valuing morals. Can you write these 4 characters in regular script with your surname? Sang Xia retorted, even Xiao Bai, why don't you allow me to change the exam content temporarily? Zhao Wuji, who had not attended school seriously for a few days, angrily shut up. He knew how to write in regular script. He didn't even know the characters in regular script, so he decided not to embarrass himself anymore. He turned his head and shouted angrily at Dai Mubai, Are you ready? Others can handle it. If you can't hold a candle of incense and go out later, don't say you're Zhao Wuji's student. As soon as she couldn't say it, senior sister vented her anger on them, and Dai Mubai slandered him in her heart. A few people met head-to-head and put the tactical plan to the end, mainly arranged by Tang San. Although it was reasonable to say that the tactics should be led by Dai Mubai, the highest-level Soul Lord and the most familiar with Zhao Wuji, he firmly shook his head into a wave drum, indicating that he was a thug who knew where to hit. Don't let him do the brain work. Tang San couldn't help but take on this job. Ning Rongrong is undoubtedly an auxiliary, responsible for providing them with an increase in speed and soul power. He is responsible for controlling Zhao Wuji's attack and limiting him as much as possible. At the same time, he assists Xiao Wu, who is the main attacker, in conducting frontal attacks. Zhu Zhuqing and Dai Mubai serve as coordinators to support and restrain them on the flank. Although it is the most basic team battle tactic, there is really no better choice in a hurry. A few people have no objections, only Ning Rongrong, who has little practical experience, curiously asked, why did you let Xiao Wu instead of senior brother Dai, who has higher soul power, be the main attacker? Brother Dai previously said that teacher Zhao is stronger than defense, and if we launch a strong attack, we will definitely not be able to win. Tang San patiently explained to her, besides, we cannot directly defeat teacher Zhao. We can only try to maneuver as much as possible. From this perspective, Xiao Wu is more suitable for the position of the main attacker. Xiao Wu patted her chest and said, "Leave it to me. Later, let my sister perform a rabbit kicking a bear for you. Have you finished talking? Let's start." Zhao Wuji impatiently shouted at the top of his throat, exchanging glances and nodding slightly. Ning Rongrong's body spun out gracefully, and a colorful and radiant glass pagoda was already in his hand. She released her martial soul and said, "The 7 treasures have turned out to have glass." At the same time, Zhao Wuji also moved. He crouched down with his legs and punched fiercely towards the ground, causing Tang's sand to suddenly change color. From this action, he immediately saw his intention to release the range attack and interrupt Ning Rongrong's support. Lightning-like, he released blue-silver grass wrapped around Ning Rongrong's waist, and while jumping up, he lifted her into the air, barely avoiding the earth-yellow shock wave that trembled on the ground. The remaining 3 of them also skimmed through the shock. Thanks to their perfect understanding with Tang San, Xiao Wu was the first to understand how to deal with it. With her toes resting slightly on Tang San's palms, which overlapped outward, she used this counter-force to shoot fiercely towards Zhao Wuji below like an arrow. Sang Xia let out a sigh and sat up slightly straight. Compared to the 7 treasures glass pagoda martial soul, it was Tang San who surprised her even more. The traditional approach of using attack instead of defense and using softness to overcome hardness is undoubtedly the most suitable strategy for dealing with Zhao Wuji. Despite the pressure on the War Soul Saint, this child can still find a feasible optimal solution in such a short time. Both in terms of psychological quality and strategic vision, this child is much stronger than Dai Mubai. She is relieved to think that maybe there will finally be someone in the college who can fight with their brains. Tang San did not disappoint her either. He had a clear and calm command throughout, but unfortunately, in the face of absolute power suppression, all tactics were of no use. Xiao Wu, who was leaping out with the help of a meteor hammer, once again locked his neck and twisted his body, falling into the ground. Finally, Zhao Wuji was about to get serious. He flipped over and rolled up on the spot, looking a bit comical with a disheveled face. However, everyone on the field, including Dai Mubai, couldn't laugh because Zhao Wuji, who looked up, only had a cold sense of war in his eyes. His fists suddenly clenched tightly. Among the 7 rhythmic soul rings surrounding the body, the first yellow soul ring instantly lit up. At this point, the incense used for timing only burns to 1/3. Scatter. Dai Mubai's warning didn't even have a chance to take effect. Zhu Zhuqing, who was still in the state of releasing his soul skills, was instantly bounced off and let out a miserable groan in mid-air. Dai Mubai caught her and pushed her into his arms, only to find that she had fallen into a coma with both arms dislocated. Xiao Wu also suffered. Although she didn't get close like Zhu Zhuqing, she was also shaken and flew up. The huge impact force made her spew out a large mouthful of blood, which was carried by blue-silver grass and fell into Tang San's arms. The attack and defense situation instantly transformed, and Zhao Wuji only released the first-century soul skill to break through their attack, directly causing the 2 to completely lose their combat ability. Tang San's heart was burning with anxiety, and Xiao Wu's face was as pale as paper. She frowned tightly due to severe pain, not knowing if she had injured her organs. Zhao Wuji had rushed towards Tang San, his second soul ring flickering. He saw the palm of the palm, which was like a fan, about to fall with a powerful force. Tang San didn't have time to dodge, so he had to try his best to cover Xiao Wu in his arms with his back, preparing to forcefully take the palm. Zhao Wuji's face, as excited as seeing prey, suddenly froze, and his arms hovered in mid-air as if pulled by an invisible force. No, it's not stagnation, it's an infinite slowdown in speed. Tang San quickly realized that he had also been affected by the same effect. Both the operation of soul power and his body seem to have become much heavier, as if frozen. The temperature seems to have suddenly dropped by a few degrees. His gaze flickered slightly as he quickly locked onto the person who created this effect. Sang Xia stood up from the rocking chair, a circle of ice blue ripples rippling from her feet, covering the entire exam venue, clearly her soul skill effect. You're almost done. When it comes to fighting, you don't take it lightly. It's not as steady as a 12-year-old child who lives a long life in vain. She frowned and stopped, walked over to check Xiao Wu's injuries, and then waved to Dai Mubai to signal him to bring Zhu Zhuqing over. She regained consciousness from her coma, and her dislocated arm was also taken back by Dai Mubai. However, she still felt a bit weak and was forced to stand straight by Dai Mubai's half-support and half-embrace. She clearly resisted this posture, staring at Dai Mubai with a fierce force in her eyes. It's okay, it didn't hurt any bones, Sang Xia breathed a sigh of relief after confirming the situation of the two girls. She turned her head and glared fiercely at Zhao Wuji. Fortunately, the children haven't been seriously injured, otherwise you'll have to apologize with death. She released her fourth soul skill, and a warm white light enveloped the three heavily injured individuals. The effect was immediate, and Xiaowu and Zhu Zhuqing's pale faces visibly turned red. Tang San's trembling arms due to detachment also stabilized, and the exhausted soul power was restored. Tang San let out a sigh of relief as he gently straightened Xiaowu's slightly disheveled forehead and whispered to Sangxia, "Senior sister, could you please help me take care of Xiaowu for a while?" Sang Xia was taken aback and said, "What do you want to do?" Her gaze swept over the incense pillar that was about to burn to the end, and she suddenly realized. She stomped her foot in anger and said, "I am an examiner. You have already passed the level to force Lao Zhao to use soul skills. Don't worry about that broken incense. I'm not going to continue with the exam." Tang San shook his head. "It's just that my younger sister is injured. As an older brother, I always have to seek justice for her." "Are you serious?" Sang Xia's face was full of questions, and all five of them were beaten so badly by Zhao Wuji, who didn't take it lightly. "How dare you be a lone hero? Young man, you looked quite calm and composed at first, not like a passionate romantic brain." Tang San's fingers clasped on the bright moon night of the 24 bridges around his waist and smiled slightly at her. "There are still some methods that haven't been used yet." Ning Rongrong punched angrily and said, "Okay, Tang San, I support you. Don't even bother Ming Wang. He's so heavy on girls, what kind of man is he?" Dai Mubai hesitated for a moment. It was reasonable for him to show brotherly loyalty and step forward to fight alongside Tang San. However, when Zhang Gruanyu felt a bit hesitant to let go as she held him in her arms. In a moment of confusion, a piercing pain suddenly hit her feet. Zhu Zhuqing seemed to see through his thoughts, stomped on him hard, and even crushed him a few times before coldly ordering, "Let go of me." Dai Mubai gentlemanly let go of the hand that was placed around her waist and smiled at her gracefully. Unfortunately, the smile that was always present in the women's circle of Soto City had no effect on Zhu Zhuqing. Her gaze at him was like that of a cockroach. Okay. Sang Xia couldn't resist, so she waved her hand and let go. "You don't need to leave your hand, killing Lao Zhao is my responsibility. I feel that there are not many people in Douluo's worldview who have read books. They spend all day pondering soul skills and fighting, and others don't care. Students are also like this, which Shandong people cannot accept. I want Shrek 7 monsters to wake up at 5:30 a.m. every morning, read and memorize the Encyclopedia of Mainland Martial Souls and the General History of the Empire." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Belonging to Hedgehogs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Belonging to Hedgehogs. Is there a guy inside who looks like a hedgehog? Zhao Wuji asked incoherently, his nose blue, face swollen, tongue tingling, and tears streaming down his face. He twisted his head desperately and used his hand to block the lens of his face away from Sangxia. Every cell in his body was filled with resistance, and he would rather die than have his dignity photographed. Tang San stumbled and took a step back, taking a few quick breaths to calm his breathing. It was indeed too difficult to use his 29-level soul power to activate the Haotian hammer, but it consumed his spiritual power even more. In this battle, he used all possible means, and in order to maximize the effectiveness of each hidden weapon, he could be said to be exhausted. Now that he suddenly relaxed, his eyes turned black and he almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Sang Xia saw that he had fought so badly and was kind enough to give him a recovery soul skill. Oscar also supported him in the back, allowing him to stand still. Oscar, who was driven back to the dormitory by Sang Xia for shaving, was summoned back by Dai Mubai to do battlefield medical treatment. Although Sang Xia had better soul healing skills, Zhao Wuji knew with his toes that this bad girl would definitely not treat him. Without self-deprecating, he extended his hand to Oscar and said, "Xiao Ao, give me a sausage and a sausage each." Oscar didn't recognize the guy in front of him who had nosebleeds smeared all over his head and face, which was disturbing the city's appearance, and asked you who he was. Zhao Wuji flew into a rage and said, "Do you mean it on purpose? It's not like Zhao Wuji." Ah. Oscar really wanted to ask how Zhao Wuji was beaten up like this, but after receiving the hint from Dai Mubai's eyes, he swallowed it with great insight and walked up to him with Zhao Wuji's seemingly cannibalistic gaze, reciting the soul curse that he was considered mentally polluted by all members of Shrek Academy. He respectfully handed out a sausage and a sausage in his hand. Zhao Wuji didn't want to be polite to him either. He quickly ate both the sausages and sausages, which made his face look better. It has to be said that Zhao Wuji really knows Sangxia very well. She doesn't have any intention of treating him at all. Not only that, but she also held up the ghost guide she had Oscar bring and slapped him fiercely while gloating and saying sarcastically, "Are you stupid? I'm 12 this year, so I'm sure I'm a rabbit." Zhao Wuji's nose is almost getting angry at her. I don't think Ming Wang has ever suffered such a big loss like today in his lifetime. Unfortunately, I can't say anything about it. After all of this is purely his own fault. He is so shameful that he doesn't want to stay here for a moment. He has to turn around and leave. "Teacher Zhao, wait a moment." Tang San shouted out and stopped him. Zhao Wuji, who was casually wiping the blood off his face, paused and asked in a rough voice, "What else do you want to do? Let me help you remove the hidden weapons from your body. Otherwise, it may have an impact on your body." After a full battle with Zhao Wuji, Tang San had lost his composure due to Xiao Wu's injury. Looking at Zhao Wuji's tragic situation, he felt a little regretful for taking too much action, and his face showed a hint of apology. "Your strength is too strong for me, I have to give it my all. I'm sorry." Zhao Wuji's face had only slightly improved, and a hint of shyness flashed quickly on his face. Sangxia was right, and in terms of stability, he could not compare to this 12-year-old guy. After the dragon whiskers pierced into the human body, they automatically curled up and tangled with the skin and muscles, bulging small bumps on Zhao Wuji's body surface. It was okay if they didn't move, but when they were pulled out, it was as if his skin and flesh were also cut out alive, causing Zhao Wuji's rough and thick skin to ache and twitch. After Tang San took out all the dragon whiskers, his whole body was soaked in cold sweat, but in front of everyone, he insisted on losing face and suffering without saying a word. Tang San also collected all the scattered hidden weapons on the ground to the bright moon night of the 24 bridges. These inconspicuous small things are expensive and can save a little bit. Moreover, many of them are poisoned, and if left unattended, they may also harm others. I think it belongs to the hedgehog. Zhao Wuji's back was chilly, and he muttered as he quickly moved away from these dazzling weapons, leaving only one sentence for Dai Mubai and Sangxia. "Mubai, girl, take the new students to move in. Remember to wake up early tomorrow when school starts." Seeing Zhao Wuji walking away, Oscar approached Tang San with a gossipy expression and the two of his brothers hooked onto his shoulder, whispering incessantly, "You can do it, little brother." This is the first time I've seen Zhao teacher so embarrassed. What's that thing you picked up from the ground? It looks like a needle to me. Can you beat Zhao teacher with just this? I also want to learn this. As long as you teach me, I'll call you big brother. It's just a stroke of luck. Tang San naturally wouldn't tell the secret of Tang clan's hidden weapons to the people he met for the first time, and casually brushed off Oscar's lengthy speech. Sang Xia scolded Oscar for saying so much. You sleep on your own until dawn, but Tang San just finished 2 fights. Can you help someone clean up for a while? Hurry up and help them go back to the dormitory to rest. I'm actually fine, thanks to my senior sister's soul skills, Tang San said honestly. Sanxia's soul skills undoubtedly have top-notch recovery effects. His physical and soul strength have now returned to normal levels, and his injuries have completely healed. He is only slightly mentally tired, but not to the extent that he needs to be helped. Speaking of which, he had already seen 2 soul skills of Sanxia. In addition to healing, there was also the ice blue ripple that was just cast on the field. From the effect, it was a control-type soul skill that could limit speed and soul power operation, and could suppress the soul saint in the possession state of the martial soul. Of course, it was also an undeniable powerful skill. However, to this day, he still did not know her martial soul and level. Sanxia did not mention it, and he could not impolitely ask this question. A college that only accepts monsters. Would she be the largest monster in this college? Sanxia could sense Tang San silently observing her with a scrutinizing gaze, but she didn't bother to pay attention. Anyway, she couldn't take her and dissect her. If he liked to look, he would do it. Ning Rongrong helped Xiao Wu, and Sanxia helped Zhu Zhuqing. From the school gate, she could see that Dai Mubai was particularly concerned about this girl and warned him not to harm her. Dai Mubai smiled bitterly and said, "Is this the image I have in your heart, senior sister?" Sanxia rolled her eyes and said, "You don't have any image in my heart at all. However, the surname Zhu, Wu Soul, is a ghost cat." Even if Dai Mubai hesitated to tell Sanxia, she knew that he was thinking about the incident at home. In her heart, she roasted that Dai Xiaoxin swore that she refused to arrange a marriage. Seeing the beautiful girl, she immediately changed her face. However, this marriage should indeed be opposed. He is not worthy of Zhu Zhuqing for his lack of male morality. After all, it involves personal privacy, and she didn't inquire with Zhu Zhuqing about this matter. The male and female dormitories were not located together, and the group separated at a fork in the road. Before leaving, Dai Mubai frowned at Sanxia and made a mouth gesture to ask her to take care of Zhu Zhuqing more. She was too cold-tempered and probably couldn't get along with the cheerful and lively Ning Rongrong and Xiao Wu. Seeing him pleading with his hands clasped together twice, Sang Xia reluctantly gave him face. You have also seen the situation of the college, and there are no worse conditions than us in the entire Douluo continent. We sleep together and don't have independent bathrooms. She pointed to the dormitory that was converted from the village houses that were requisitioned and borrowed in front of us, and half-jokingly said to Ning Rongrong, "There must be no comparison with the 7 treasures and glass sect. It's still time to turn around and leave now. It's okay." Although Miss Ning stayed at the best hotel even when she ran away from home, the flowers on the table were not the same every day, and there were service staff to help carry her bags during check.in and check.out. She had never lived in such a poor room before, but she had already set her psychological expectations to the lowest level. After seeing the clean and tidy dormitory environment, which was not magnificent, she thought it was still good. I thought I was going to stay in the cow shed I passed by before. Xiao Wu was even better at passing the time, and she was even surprised. 2 people sleeping together. So good, I used to live in a big bunk with 20 people. Sanxia didn't expect the younger generation to have such strong acceptance ability. She rarely stopped speaking and raised her hand to tenderly rub the head of the little rabbit that sounded like she had lived a difficult life before. "Okay," she said, "Xiao Wu, let's have a room together, Ning Rongrong's eyes rolled and he took Xiaowu's arm to invite him. She, who is also very tiger-like, does not want to have a room with Sangxia because one mountain cannot tolerate two tigers. She also does not want to have a room with Zhu Zhuqing, afraid that she will suffocate herself if she doesn't say a few words to her roommates in a day. Moreover, Zhu Zhuqing even attacks the paper man she likes. Xiaowu wanted to have a room with her beautiful sister, but Ning Rongrong blinked her eyes and looked at her expectantly, making her feel embarrassed to refuse. Sangxia saw that the two had already made up for each other, so she took Zhu Zhuqing with her and walked away. She looked at the figure that was far away from her with some sadness, nodded and agreed to Ning Rongrong, okay. At the same time, Tang San stood at the entrance of the dormitory and looked at Oscar seriously, "Do you wash socks?" Oscar patted his chest and promised, "Wash every day. I'm not someone like Dai Lauda or Pang who doesn't pay attention to hygiene." Tang San breathed a sigh of relief. At that time, Tang San didn't realize that he was too happy too early. Dai Mubai and Ma Hongjun lived together not only because they had the same bad taste, but also because they didn't want to be roommates with Oscar. And Tang San belongs to the rabbit category, which is a private device. I think Xiao Wu should belong to the rabbit category, so Tang San also needs to belong to the rabbit category, rightfully and confidently. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. No one can refuse a kitty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. No one can refuse a kitty. As Sangxia reached for the key from her pocket to open the door, she said to Zhu Zhuqing, "You probably don't like living with others, do you? But there's nothing we can do. There are only a few dormitories in the school, so bear with it. When I get rich, I will definitely have the dean build a new dormitory first." "It's okay," the black-haired girl responded coldly. She was not someone who would be picky about accommodation conditions. It's common to have meals and outdoor accommodations on the way from Xinglua to Soto City. For her, having a roof with a corner to cover the rain and a bed would already be great. Fran must like this kind of picky student. Sang Xia picked up her key, which was filled with flashy ornaments, and twisted open the door lock, pushing it to signal Zhu Zhuqing to enter. She didn't exaggerate at all. If the dormitory conditions were simple, it was really simple. There was one bed, one bedside table, and one desk on each side of the wall. The wardrobes were shared, and the entire decoration only had repainted walls, which were stronger and limited than the shelter. The only redeeming feature is good lighting, with sunlight shining through the clear windows and several wilting green plants on the windowsill. Sangxia always forgets to water them. Before, Sang Xia lived alone, so she was inevitably a little more casual. This morning, she hurried to get up without folding the quilts. They were rolled together with the changed pajamas and piled on the bed in disorder. The book she read last night and half of the thread draft were buckled on the desk. The cat felt poked with the hair of rice dumpling was put aside, and had begun to take shape. She was a little embarrassed, and coughed slightly in disguise. The bedding is uniformly distributed by the college, and if you don't like this color, you can buy it and change it yourself. She pointed out that the bed sheet, duvet cover, and pillowcase were all empty beds with a pale color. This aesthetically confusing bedding of questionable quality was purchased by Fran, because no serious person would buy this kind of filial piety-like thing to make a bed. The vendor had to lower the price and sell it off. Fran, who was overjoyed, generously offered bedding for free to all students until graduation. Everyone was deeply moved to see the dean so generous in their lifetime, and then refused him. After all, no one wanted to lie in bed and just cover the blanket to play the role of a corpse being pushed and cremated. Zhu Zhuqing nodded. "By the way, do you mind if I smoke occasionally?" Sangxia suddenly asked. "I don't mind." In order to earn travel expenses, Zhu Zhuqing joined a mercenary group halfway through, where there was a mix of good and bad. She had seen the ugliest things in those people, and smoking was not even considered a bad habit in her eyes. But there was still a rare bit of surprise in her eyes, because Sangxia seemed to be a delicate and noble girl like a princess well protected by her family, and things like cigarettes seemed not to appear in the same world as her. I rarely smoke. As if seeing through her thoughts, Sangxia smiled and extended a hand. Her fingers were long and fair, with no signs of yellowing between them. I don't have a smoking habit, and I don't smoke in the dormitory. After all, I have a cat. Then Zhu Zhuqing didn't mind any more. Instead, she cared more about the latter half of Sangxia's sentence and whispered, "Cat. It's called rice dumpling." Sangxia called its name and searched around the room. "I don't dislike it." Miwu. At this moment, a soft and graceful cat cry suddenly came from outside the window. Sangxia's eyes lit up and she quickly opened the window to let in the crazy little rascal outside. Rice Dumpling is a pure white, long-haired, pastoral cat with only a handful of black hairs on its belly. At that time, the mother cat gave birth to 2 kittens. She was frightened by the bear children in the village. She picked up the stronger cub and ran away. The thin, small ear was still missing a corner, and she was left behind. It happened that Li Yusong went to the forest to pick up pine fungus that day, followed the thin, weak milk cat's call all the way to find it, and carried it back in his pocket. At that time, it had not even opened its eyes and lay trembling in the palm of Zhao Wuji's rare hand. Zhao Wuji dared not speak loudly, holding it and muttering about whether this little thing could be raised or not. It was really close to not being able to feed. At that time, its stomach was too weak, and it could vomit and diarrhea even after drinking slightly cold goat milk. This made the elderly single dogs in the college, who had no parenting experience, very anxious. In the end, they had no choice but to find a mother cat in the village who had just given birth to her, to be its godmother. They raised it at the house for a month before bringing it back. When they came back, the family had a strong objection, saying that your cat couldn't even compete with other kittens to drink milk and had to be carried away to get a sip of milk. Our other kittens were all starving and thin. Fred repeatedly apologized, turned around and held the fattened kitten to Sangxia, saying that you should give her a name. Sangxia on the hospital bed reached out and scratched her kitten, looking at her timidly, and smiled. White fur and black belly, that's called rice dumpling. Rice dumpling has been kept for 3 years in a delicious way. Although its body shape is gradually developing horizontally, it has a fluffy and soft long hair covering without any fat, and its face is still pretty and sweet. It is recognized that the most cutthroat kitten in the village can attract 7 or 8 male cats to scratch the door at night. Unfortunately, Royal Highness Princess's eyes are higher than his head, and he scorns the cats who are actively licking the dog, driving them up and down. Sangxia held Rice Dumpling in her arms and rolled it from end to end. It was so comfortable that it opened its belly and made a gurgling sound. The princess loved to be clean. After running around for a long time, her fur was still soft and fresh. She was satisfied with the roll and asked Zhu Zhuqing with a spirit of sharing. "Do you want to hold it?" Since the cat appeared, Zhu Zhuqing's gaze has not shifted away from it. After hearing her question, his brain quickly replied, "Yes." Zhu Zhuqing. Her pale face slowly turned red, even her ears tinged with embarrassment. Sangxia couldn't help laughing. She quickly waved her hand to show that she was not laughing at her. She put Rice Dumpling into her hand. "Then you can hold it for a while. I'll clean up the bed." Hey, I didn't expect to see such a cold and aloof girl who has no resistance to kittens behind her back. Is this the legendary contrast cute? She thought with a smile on her face. However, it's normal for her to like Rice Dumpling. After all, the kitten is the cutest creature in the world, and Rice Dumpling is the cutest kitten in the world. No one can refuse the cute Rice Dumpling that is not fierce, not noisy, not torn down and held to his relatives. Zhu Zhuqing held Sangxia's cat stiffly. Rice Dumpling liked the 2-legged beast. Although Sangxia was his favorite, he was not repelled when others held him. He had already exposed his belly, but the two-legged beast did not shake it, so he turned over in puzzlement. He raised his head and touched the tip of her nose with his nose, wondering. Me. Zhu Zhuqing. She secretly looked up at Sangxia and found that she was busy tidying up the messy bed, not looking at her side. I will sleep for a while. If you are hungry, you can go to the canteen with the two girls, or let Rice Dumpling take you there. It knows the way. Today Sangxia, who is far from reaching the standard of sleep, yawned, rolled his pajamas into a ball and threw them into the washing basin at his feet, shook off the quilt and wrapped himself in it. The muffled voice came out through the quilt. Zhu Zhuqing quickly overturned Rice Dumpling, buried his head in its belly and sucked it for a while. He held its meat pad and couldn't put it down. He was so skillful that if Sangxia saw it, he could only sigh. Rice Dumpling was a little confused by this fierce caress, but the two-legged beast really rolled it very comfortably. After kicking its legs, it stopped struggling and lay down and enjoyed it. No one can refuse a kitten. Shocking sound, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. He doesn't look much like you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. He doesn't look much like you. When Sangxia woke up, it was already dark outside. She sat up with disheveled hair, restlessly fumbling for the buttons behind her, trying to remove the cumbersome dress from her body. Halfway through, she realized she wasn't living alone anymore and quickly stopped. In a dormitory like a shelter, of course, there is no walk-in closet. She jumped out of bed, put on slippers, and dug out clean pajamas from the wardrobe. Then, she slipped back to bed and wrapped herself up with a blanket. She struggled to change clothes under the blanket and decided to go to Fran's office tonight to extort the screen of the Xiaoyefenghe in his small vault. Rice Dumpling was nestled in its soft and comfortable basket. She reached out to touch its small head and added cat food to the bowl. She was still in a daze after she just woke up. After feeding Rice Dumpling, she sat beside the bed and stayed for half a day. Until her empty stomach could not bear to protest to her, she realized that she needed to be fed most. But this thought only flashed in her mind for a second before she kicked her out, because she was so hungry that she didn't want to move, and there was definitely no food left in the cafeteria at that time. After a brief moment of contemplation, she fell to bed, intending to use rags to fight hunger, and then went to sleep. She didn't feel hungry anymore while sleeping. Zhu Zhuqing, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, meditating and regulating his breath, opened his eyes and said calmly, "I brought you some food and put it on the desk." "Hey." Sangxia flipped over and sat up, looking up at the desk. Sure enough, she found a food box on the table, with a note stuck on the lid. "I asked senior sister about her taste and helped her bring a portion. We should have dinner on time," she signed and drew a picture of a little rabbit holding a carrot and gnawing on it. "The little girls are all little angels," and Sangxia sighed as she slowly finished the loving dinner brought by her junior sister. Seeing Zhu Zhuqing still practicing, she didn't disturb her either. She carried the food box to the cafeteria, washed the utensils, and returned them. She then picked a freshly picked tomato from the kitchen and walked towards Fran's office while nibbling on it. Unexpectedly, Fran was not there. Sangxia finished nibbling on the tomato in her hand, threw the persimmon stem into the trash can, and sat down on the chair behind her desk with familiarity. She tore a page from Fran's notebook, intending to notify him in writing that she wanted to requisition his screen. When she picked up her pen, she accidentally let out a "hey" sound and shook Fran's precious antique fountain pen. The ink on the tip of the pen was still wet, indicating that someone had been using it not long ago. She furrowed her brow slightly and noticed that the ink bottle cap on the table was also open. Tomorrow's speech at the school opening ceremony was only halfway written, and the last stroke of the word suddenly came to an end, abruptly crossing the page and almost scratching the back of the paper. The window was half open, and a cool night breeze blew in from outside, brushing the draped curtains. She suddenly stood up, jumped out of the window, and in the moment she jumped, a pair of wings shrouded in shallow golden light spread behind her, rushing away along the remaining weak soul power waves. In the dense forest, Zhao Wuji lay on the ground in a state of embarrassment, his already unbearable face now swollen in circles. His dark eyes were covered in blood and he couldn't even open them, making it difficult to breathe. However, strangely enough, despite being beaten into such a miserable state and having a bad temper, he didn't become angry or lose his composure. His face even showed a grateful expression. "Thank you, Haotian, for your guidance. The recent battle. To be more precise, it was just a one-sided beating. Did not impose any burden on the black-robed man who stood with his hands down. He didn't even wrinkle his hem, and his voice was low and calm, with little emotion. I'll trouble you in the future." Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly looked up with a cold gaze under his hood. The wind is rising. The cool night breeze brushed open the branches and leaves, and the bright moonlight shone down, illuminating the graceful figure leaping from the treetops. The shadows of the branches and leaves dragged and stretched on the ground, shimmering in the gaps. In the swaying moonlight, she gathered the huge light feathers behind her and slowly landed on the broken branches on the ground. The girl lifted her face, her delicate and pale face as clear as a cold white jade, almost transparent by the sparkling moonlight, dazed and overlapping with the child with eyes like deer many years ago. Fran never thought that Sanxia would come here. He turned pale with fright and explained with fear, "Crown, this is a student of our college. The little girl is not sensible. I will educate her when I go back and make sure she keeps her mouth shut. You must not have the same understanding as the younger generation." Sanxia didn't understand what he was afraid of at all. She tilted her head and looked at the person in black in front of her for a while before suddenly laughing, "It's you." She obviously also recalled that encounter, deep in the Chamber of Fallen Moon. "My surname is Tang, Haotian Hammer, no wonder. But he doesn't look much like you." Tang Hao is so reckless that he dares to penetrate the forbidden area of the martial soul hall with just one hammer per person, and he has no resemblance to that 800-minded child. Although it was only a one-sided encounter, Tang Hao had a very deep impression of this girl. She looked much healthier, no longer the fragile glass doll-like appearance confined by delicate shackles on a frame-like constrained chair. When he laughed, there were small pear pits on his cheeks. His tense expression softened slightly and he nodded to her, saying, "It looks like you're doing well here." It's not surprising, he thought, staying anywhere is better than that ghost place. Well, everyone takes good care of me. Sanxia curved her eyes and smiled, as the night wind blew from behind her and brushed away the scattered strands of hair at her temples. Tang Hao felt a little relieved in his heart, because he could see that the smile was really relaxed and happy, completely different from the way he used to hide in his arms and overlook the bright lights of the martial soul city. With a look that was almost sorrowful and hateful, as if eager to destroy all the noisy and bustling lights in the world, yet as if reluctant to let time stop here forever, she smiled and asked softly, "Is this such a bright place outside?" After a brief conversation with Tang Hao, Sang Xia looked back at his disappearing figure that had flickered in the blink of an eye. She smiled at Zhao Wuji, who could barely stand with Fran's help, and said, "You bullied the children. Did the parents come knocking on you? You deserve it." After speaking cold words, she spread out her hands and released the glow of her fourth soul skill, praying for blessings. A pale golden light fell on Zhao Wuji, and in just a few breaths, his face looked much better. The wounds on his face that had been scraped and scraped quickly healed at a visible speed to the naked eye. But the effect of praying for blessings and radiance is limited to restoring soul power, dispelling negative mental states, and healing external injuries. Blood stasis cannot be eliminated, so Zhao Wuji still holds a pair of panda eyes with a swollen face and a blue nose. However, he doesn't care about this anymore. He grabbed Sanxia's wrist and asks nervously, "Girl, where did you know this evil god?" "I've seen it before," Sanxia shrugged. Zhao Wuji wanted to ask further, but was interrupted by Fran's slap on the forehead. The dean at the top of the food chain at Shrek College stared and said, "With so much talk, I think you haven't been beaten badly enough. Why don't you hurry back and apply a hot towel to your face, waiting for the new students to see a joke tomorrow?" After driving away Zhao Wuji, he blackened his face and scolded Sangxia, saying, "Why are you so brave? You can't even figure out the situation and dare to chase after me alone. What if there is hostility under Haotian's crown? Both old Zhao and I have lived our lives to the fullest. You're so young, don't you feel like you're wasting your life? I still hope you'll throw a basin and flag me at my funeral." The girl at the top of the Shrek Academy food chain pouted, although she still gave him face and didn't answer back. She clearly didn't listen to his words. She stubbornly turned her head aside and ignored him, firmly expressing her willingness to never repent and dare again next time. Fran had no choice but to stop chattering, take off his coat, and drape it over her to hurry back to sleep. Fran is tall. His coat is too ill-fitting on Sangxia's body. The hem falls to her knee. The ankle of the light summer pajamas is not as thick as Zhao Wuji's wrist. He is distraught. He wants to eat and drink for so many years. How can he feel that the girl has less meat than rice dumpling? Looking at the thin back of the girl, he suddenly said, "The past is over, this is your home." Sangxia's footsteps paused, and his eyes widened in confusion due to his unforeseeable speech. Fran's eyes behind the lenses were wise and gentle, like elders and more like fathers. Normally, Sangxia should have been moved, but she couldn't adapt to the warm way of getting along with Fran. She couldn't help but say something bad. Then this family is too poor, isn't it? Fran wants to beat her up again. Tang Hao's view of Sangxia is similar to encountering an abused kitten on the roadside. He thinks the cat is pitiful, but once he sees it, he forgets it. However, after a few years, he finds that the cat has not been disturbed and died in another household. He is still very pleased to be kept healthy and lively, and that's all. And Sangxia to Fran. "It's okay to throw a basin and flag, but I can play the Suona for you in your funeral hall, Fran. My fist is hard." End of this chapter.